think that the black Americans have been the only real diehard Americans here, because we're the only ones who carried the process through the process. That everyone else has to sort of like skip stages. We're the ones who marched, we're the ones who carried the Bible, we're the ones who carried the flag, we're the ones who tried to go through the courts. And being born American didn't seem to matter. Because we were born Americans, but we still had to fight for what we were looking for. And we still had to go through those channels and those processes.
I don't really care what you have to say. Facts over fiction is the motto replay. Muhammad Ali came up from the clay. Grassroots built up this USA. Now knowing your history, you'll get played. Equip yourself cause you came to slay any opponent that's up in our way. Look at Malcolm X and his delivery.
Did you ever think what it would be like traveling along in an open car without a windshield? Boy, you wouldn't go very far before you got all splattered with mud. And you'd have to keep your eyes closed so as not to be blinded by the dust. Well, when you're traveling along in life, Rangers, common sense acts as a pretty important windshield. It lets you see where you're going. I am the greatest!
Test 1 2, test 1 2. Hope everyone is doing well. Just checking the audio, family. Just checking the audio. Test 1 2, test 1 2. All right, we are good on the audio. Thanks everyone for joining. This is Emend the Mass Media Group, and today is Decoration Day, also known as Memorial Day. So, before we actually get into the topic today of what the title of this video or live stream is called, Fake Reparations ? What is real reparations? What is fake reparations? After this presentation, you may decide that, hey, some of this information might be real reparations or not. As always, that's up to you. You do your own research, but you know, I appreciate everybody for coming through on the live and on the replay. So when you have a chance, please hit that bell for notifications. Please like, share, and subscribe. If you do go on to Amazon, should be in the description. You go ahead and support this platform there, as well as go to etmmediagroupstore.com where you can get the latest merch as well. And please don't forget, if you even have a chance today, you can go back, check out this documentary, reparationsnow.com. You can also check it out on Tubi. All right. So just a couple updates here. There's some California legislative deadlines going on. So obviously today is Memorial Day. We have June 2nd, there's going to be another floor session. But most likely, some of the bills that we actually are following, if we are in support or not, will probably be held sometime probably next week, because the last day for bills to pass that are introduced in that particular house that the bill got introduced in is June 6th. So here's the calendar for June 6th. Once again, June 6th is the last day for each house to pass bills introduced out here in California. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here. I know there were two bills in particular that we were following. One was the, let me see here, the California Latino Commission bill. That bill did pass appropriations and is moving to the Senate floor to be voted on. But the Immigrant and Refugee Affairs Agency, Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs, is currently held in submission. So most likely that bill will not move forward, but that is a heads up there. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here and give us some updates on, let's see here, what's going on. Let me move this. Thanks everyone's patience. I appreciate it. All right, here. So here's the latest update for the COVC packages, aka the repair package bills. That's what they're calling them, the repair package bills. All right, so and here's some other bills that we've been following as well that aren't part of their package, but we feel like some of the bills are actually here. I'm trying to scroll down here. All right, here we go. Some of these bills are definitely will help the community at large. All right, so here we go. ACA 6, slavery, which is part of their reparations package bill, is currently pending referral. We have AB 7, post-secondary education by Bryan Assembly, that's headed to the Assembly floor. AB 742, Department of Consumer Affairs. Let me just make sure that, okay, yeah, that's blown up. All right, everybody should be able to see that. Yeah, that's moving to the Assembly floor. We have AB 742, which is El Haruri. She's in the Assembly. That's also headed to the floor. We have AB 62, racially motivated eminent domain. That's by McKenna. That's headed to the Assembly floor. We have AB 766, a state agency by Sharp Collins. She's an Assembly member. That's headed to the floor. All right, so we also have SB 437 by Weber Pearson. That's headed to the Senate floor. Now this ACA 7, which is Government Preferences by Jackson, that is actually a 2-year bill study. I believe that's the one that's trying to overturn here, and need to double check that, but I believe that's the one that's supposed to overturn Prop 209 out here in California, which, by the way, for those who don't know what Prop 209, basically you can't, there's no preference on race out here currently. So I believe that bill is trying to overturn that. But that's a 2-year study, so that 2-year study, here we go. It's a 2-year bill, so it probably won't be voted on, if at all, until next year. All right, AB 475, prisons and jails. That is currently held under suspension. That was Lori Wilson. So most likely that will not move forward. We have AB 785 by Sharp Collins. That's headed to the Assembly floor. We have AB 801, residential mortgage loans by Mia Bonta. She's an Assembly member and CLBC member. That's headed to the Assembly floor. Okay, here we go. We have, let's see, AB 935, a state agency by Assembly member Ransom. That's headed to the Assembly floor. We have SB 464 by Senator Smallwood Cuevas. That's headed to the Senate floor. SB 503, medical software, Weber Pearson, Senate, headed to the Senate floor. SB 510, pupil instruction. That's headed to the Senate floor. Home purchase assistance program, descendants of slaves. That's headed to the Assembly floor. I believe that's Tina McKenna. That probably needs to be updated. SB 518, descendants of enslaved person reparations. That's Assembly Weber Pearson. That's headed to the Senate floor. And AB 1315, this is not part of the CLBC package, But this is the California American Freedmen Affairs Agency bill that was originally introduced by Senator Bradford last year, but Asali decided to pick it up, who's now actually a U.S. attorney out here in California. So he's no longer part of the assembly. So that bill is actually still looking for an author, and it's pending referral. Our AB 335, the designation of California Black Serving Institution, that's held under submission. That's by Mike Gibson. So that bill will most likely not move forward. AB 773, mental health, Black mental health navigator certification. That was by Corey Jackson. That's going to be held under submission and will most likely not move forward. And then we have SB 515, the local government collection of demographic data, and that will be disaggregating American freemen or people who consider themselves Black American here in the United States. That's going to be on the local level. All right, that's by Senator Laura Richardson, and that is headed to the floor. All right, so let's get back to, let's see here. All right, so let's share this tab. So today is Memorial Day, aka Decoration Day. So we're gonna briefly go over this day, and then hopefully we'll be able to soon get into the topic that we're going to be talking about today. But in the interim, we must honor and praise those who serve this United States Armed Forces. So shout out to family members who are veterans. I know I had two grandfathers who were in the Navy, and I believe my grandfather was one of my grandfathers was in the Navy, and the other was in the Army, I believe. No, I'm sorry. I think it was the Air Force. All right. Memorial Day. Memorial Day is known as Decoration Day. It's one of the federal holidays in the United States for honoring and mourning the U.S. military personnel who died while serving in the United States Armed Forces. It is observed on the last Monday of May. Memorial Day is also considered the unofficial beginning of summer in the United States. It is a day for visiting cemeteries and memorials, excuse me, to mourn the military personnel who died in the line of duty. Volunteers will place American flags on the graves of those military personnel in national cemeteries. Others, such as family and friends, will also come to lay flowers and grieve on the graves of those who died in the U.S. military. All right, so there's some claimed origins out there, but we're going to talk about one in particular in South Carolina. On May 1st, 1865, let me blow this up a little bit. You may or may not be able to see it. On May 1st, 1865, in Charleston, South Carolina, the recently freed Black population held a parade of 10,000 people to honor 257 deceased Union soldiers. The soldiers had been buried in a mass grave at the Washington Race Course, having died at the Confederate prison camp located there. After the city fell, the freed Black population unearthed and properly buried the soldiers, placing flowers at their graves. The event was reported contemporaneously in the Charleston Daily Courier and the New York Tribune. Historian David Blight has called this commemoration the first Memorial Day. However, no direct link has been established between this event and General John Logan's 1868 proclamation for a national holiday. So once again, salute to all of our decorated soldiers out there. We really appreciate you and what you do to protect the United States and the world in general. So thank you for that. All right, family. So let's get into it. I think before we actually get into what is considered fake reparations and what is real reparations, I'm going to pull up a document here from the California Reparations Task Force. All right. Well, this is an 1,100-page document that was of a 2.5-year study, or a 2-year study out here in California. All right, in the UN Principles on Reparation, the UNGA held that any full and effective reparations scheme must include the following 5 forms: restitution, compensation, rehabilitation, satisfaction, and guarantees of non-repetition. All right, let's say that one more time. In the UN Principles on Reparation, the UNGA held that any full and effective reparation scheme must include the following 5 forms of reparations. Once again, that's restitution, compensation, rehabilitation, satisfaction, and guarantees of non-repetition. While the UN Principles on Reparations are primarily based on the notion of state responsibility, the negotiators also reached a consensus that non-state actors are to be held responsible for their policies and practices, allowing victims to seek redress and reparation on the basis of legal liability and human solidarity, and not just on the basis of state responsibility. All right. So let's see here. Let's see who's actually already received reparations. One group that has already received reparations would be the Japanese American. At the time of the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941, about 120,000 persons of Japanese ancestry lived on the U.S. mainland, mostly along the Pacific coast. About 2/3 were full citizens born and raised in the United States. Following the Pearl Harbor attack, however, a wave of anti-Japanese suspicion and fear led the Roosevelt administration to adopt a drastic policy towards these residents, alien and citizen alike. All right. At the time of the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941, about 120 persons, Japanese lived in the U.S. mainland, mostly along the Pacific coast. About 2/3 were full citizens born and raised in the United States. Following the Pearl Harbor attack, however, once again, a wave of anti-Japanese suspicion and fear led the Roosevelt administration to adopt a drastic policy towards these residents. Virtually all Japanese Americans were forced to leave their homes and property and live in camps for most of the war. The government cited national security as justification for this policy, although it violated many of the most essential constitutional rights of Japanese Americans. All right, so I'm not going to read this full article here. I'm just going to go into what would later be the law that established the reparatory justice for them. All right, so let's see here. All right, okay. I'm just trying to find what this act was called here. I believe it was called the Justice Act of 1987, I believe. Here, let me just double check that, make sure that I have it correct, because I don't want to say anything incorrectly here. Actually, you know what? Let me go back to the article here. Okay, let's see here. All right, so while I get the actual act information, I thought I had it, but anyway, let me verify that the actual act name, and then we'll get into kind of what the act is about. But anyway, the Japanese American relocation program had significant consequences. Camp residents lost some $400 million in property during their incarceration. Congress provided $38 million in reparations in 1948, and 40 years later paid an additional $20,000 to each surviving individual who had been detained in the camps. The Japanese American community itself was also transformed, okay, by this experience. Before the war, most Japanese Americans adhered closely to the customs and traditions enforced by their oldest generation, called Issei, which often deepened their isolation from mainstream American society. All right, so let's see what. Just look it up real quick. The Japanese reparations. Okay, so all right, so I'm just gonna go ahead and let's look at this one up. Okay, so I'm gonna share this screen. Okay, so here, if you guys, hopefully, can you see the screen? Yep. All right. Let me just check my audio here, make sure we're good. Test 1 2, test 1 2. Let me just check my audio. Okay, we're still good. All right, so the original act was called the Japanese American Claims Act. The Japanese American Claims Act is a law passed by the United States Congress and signed by President Harry S. Truman on July 2nd, 1948. The law authorized the settlement of property loss claims by people of Japanese descent who were moved from the Pacific Coast area during World War II. According to a Senate report on the act, there were concerns about whether the United States government had the right to evacuate and place all people of Japanese ancestry in internment camps. As a result of being placed in the Japanese internment camps, there was great loss of property, belongings, business, and etc. Let's see here. Okay, so this goes into, so originally it was known as the Claims Act of 1948. But the actual payment, let's see here. Japanese. 1987. All right. Okay. So that would be later called. All right, so it would later be called, I'm trying to get the, all right, here we go. Show this tab, okay. All right, so it will later be called the Civil Liberties Act of 1988. The Federal Act, Public Law 100-383, that granted redress of $20,000 and a formal presidential apology to every surviving U.S. citizen or legal resident immigrant of Japanese ancestry incarcerated during World War II, first introduced in Congress as the Civil Liberties Act of 1987, H.R. 422. All right, and it was signed into law on August 10th, 1988 by President Ronald Reagan. The act cited racial prejudice, wartime hysteria, and a lack of political leadership as causes for the incarceration as a result of formal recommendations by the Commission on Wartime Relocation and Internment of Civilians, a body appointed by Congress in 1980 to make findings on and suggest remedies for the incarceration. So when people say reparations can't be done, it has been done for other groups outside of those who built this country. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and let's see, switch my screen here. Okay, so this was the act that was actually signed into law here. I'm not going to actually read this whole thing. I'm probably just going to go maybe a couple of sentences, and then we'll move on to another group who's actually gotten reparations. All right. Public Law 100-383, August 10th, 1988, an act to implement recommendations of the Commission on Wartime Relocation and Internment of Civilians. Be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled, Section 1 purposes. The purposes of this act are to, 1, Acknowledge the fundamental injustice of the evacuation, relocation, and internment of the United States citizens and permanent resident aliens of Japanese ancestry during World War II. Apologize on behalf of the people of the United States for the evacuation, relocation, and internment of such citizens and permanent resident aliens. Provide for a public education fund to finance efforts to inform the public about the internment of such individuals so to prevent the recurrence of any similar event. I might be incorrect, but I believe that's non-repetition or guarantees a non-repetition at point 3. Make restitution to those individuals of Japanese ancestries who were interned. Make restitution to Aleut residents of the Pribilof Islands and the Aleutian Islands west of Unimak Island in settlement of the United States, obligations in equity and at law. We actually might read this. This is interesting. It's actually, this document's 14 pages. So obviously I'm not going to read the whole thing, but we might read it at a later date. So let's go to another group who received reparations. All right. The Holocaust survivors will continue to receive additional one-time payments from the German government until 2027 as a result of claims conference negotiations. All right. This is according to claimscon.org. The Claims Conference. This is a conference on Jewish material claims against Germany. Home care services funding for Holocaust survivors will increase an additional $105.2 million for a total of $808.9 million. Outcomes for these negotiations also include expanded one-time payments per year through 2027, impacting more than 128,000 Holocaust survivors worldwide. All right. Specific outcomes from these negotiations include home care services in 2024. $888.9 million will be provided for home care services, including additional $105.2 million in funding. Let me blow this up a little bit. Hardship fund. All right. More than 128,000 Holocaust survivors will receive a one-time payment, cash, family, cash, monies, under the hardship fund, which has been negotiated for 2024 through 2027. The amount for each of the additional years was set at $1,250 per person for 2024, $1,300 for 2025, $1,350 for 2026, and $1,400 for 2027. Holocaust education. Funding for Holocaust education has been extended for 2 more years and increased each year by $3 million. Total compensation. The total compensation of direct compensation for survivors, including one-time payments and monthly pensions, is projected to be $535 million for 2024. All right. If you'd like more information on this, you can go to claimsconference or claimscon.org. That's claimcons.org. All right, family. So once again, going back to this tab, that's restitution, compensation, rehabilitation, satisfaction, and guarantees of non-repetition. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and transition here a little bit. So remove some of this information and yeah, let's get into it here. I'm gonna go ahead and And like, shout out to my good partners, Kim and Darlene, if you're out there listening, appreciate you. Obviously, you know, when your partners are here and you're able to maneuver a little bit quicker, it makes things flow a little bit faster and more fluid and smooth. But hopefully, you know, I'm doing a decent job bringing everyone this information. All right. So for those that don't know, Maryland Democrat lawmaker, Governor Wes Moore, he actually vetoed a bill to study reparations out there in California. But here's another article, all right, by the Baltimore. This was written by Sam Janish, May 23rd, at the Baltimore Sun. All right, so this article is titled "Maryland Democratic Lawmakers Describe Communications Breakdown with Governor Wes Moore." Governor Wes Moore and Democratic lawmakers left Annapolis this week with a pin in the 2025 session and, more than ever, in their time together at the helm of Maryland politics. Some hard feelings. In a high-pressure year that feature what many lawmakers are publicly and privately referring to as communications breakdown between the governor's office and the Maryland General Assembly, dominated by Moore's own party, neither side got everything it wanted. For the first time, Moore's entire slate of bills that he introduced and personally fought for didn't cross the finish line. And by the end of the final bill signing ceremony of the session on Tuesday, Moore had likewise stifled more of his allies' priorities than ever, vetoing 24 bills in a way that shocked lawmakers, some of whom said they'd been led to believe the governor backed their efforts. All right, so there is a lot going on out there. You know, regarding, you know, legislation this year, which is good. I mean, I'm glad we're having these conversations. But at the end of the day, you know, we need to ask ourselves, you know, are these studies worth it? Are we going to study to ad nauseum here, or are we going to try to implement some redress for those who built this country? Now, in another article, and I believe if you go to our platform here on YouTube, I actually did another story on that. But it does look like sometime maybe on Juneteenth or around Juneteenth, the Maryland governor, Wes Moore, will be proposing some of his ideas to supposedly, quote unquote, you know, go ahead and make sure that that wealth gap is taken care of. That's according to what he's saying. So, you know, we got to see what he has to say. We don't know until, you know, people actually, you know, show up accordingly to what they're talking about. So let's see what he has to say. I'm gonna go ahead and actually, let's see here. I'm gonna try to get some. Let's see. I had a couple more articles here that I wanted to show. Let's see here. Let's see. Actually, is this? Can I show this one? Okay. Actually, as a matter of fact, here. Let me take this off. All right. All right. So, it does look like supposedly some Maryland legislators want to override or want to reinstate what Governor Moore overrided for the reparations bill. So let's look at this article. Maryland legislators say that they will override governor's veto, reinstate reparations commission bill. All right. So for those that don't know, South Carolina Representative John King says state Democratic Party should rescind the invitation to speak at an annual fundraiser. So looks like John King out there in South Carolina wanted to basically rescind the invitation, probably and most likely due to the governor's veto here. All right. Let's see here. I'm trying to get some information, some pertinent. All right. Okay, Governor Moore needs to realize that he's not only impacting Maryland, but he's impacting South Carolina and many other states with the veto, said Carolina State Representative John King, a Democrat from Rock Hill. The Maryland bill called for the creation of a commission that would assess specific federal, state, and local policies from 1877 to 1965, the post-Reconstruction and Jim Crow eras that led to economic disparities based on race, including housing, segregation and discrimination, redlining, restrictive covenants, and tax policies. The all-volunteer commission would also examine how public and private institutions may have benefited from those policies and would then recommend appropriate reparations, which could include statements of a policy, monetary compensation, social service assistance, business incentives, or child care costs. Unlike previous years, when reparations bills had price tags of $1 million or more, the bill passed this year drew heavily on volunteers and existing resources. It is expected to cost $54,500 in the first year. Wow, that's actually really good. In his veto letter, Moore praised the work and the intentions of those behind the bill, but said, now is not the time for another study. Now is the time for continued action that delivers results for the people we serve. He cited a number of studies over the past 25 years on the legacy of slavery and promised that his legislative agenda next year would include a package of proposals to, quote, address the barriers that have walled off Black families in Maryland from work, wages, and wealth for generations. All right. So once again, restitution, compensation, rehabilitation, satisfaction, and guarantees of non-repetition. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's, I didn't want to, we could have, once again, gone into the subject too ad nauseum. I just wanted to, come on today just to make a couple of brief points, just to know that when we're talking about reparations and what reparations is and what it's not, you can make that decision to yourself. But I know for me, one of the biggest opponents or proponents for reparations is compensation, right? The bills, once again, I'm going to pull up. Let me see if I can pull up the CLBC's package here. Let me see. Let me pull that up again. All right, so let's see here. So once again, they're in their quote unquote repair package here, which, some of it might be decent legislation, but I don't see anything about compensation on here. Zero, none. At least with last year, there was going to be a mechanism, right, to start, at least building the mechanism to compensation, known as the California American Freedmen Affairs Fund last year. All right. So it's kind of crazy how you go from, okay, we're going to actually establish something that, will benefit those who built this country through the California American Freedmen Affairs Agency, right? We're going to create this foundation to what we have today. And actually, as a matter of fact, I think we're going to have to go into, let's see if I can blow my screen up a little bit better here. We're going to have to do a deeper dive in the SB 518 and SB 437 because I believe there were some amendments to those as well. because SB 437 right now, that's very interesting. How that's basically another study, and the task force didn't recommend for any more studies. But those two bills, SB 518 and SB 437, are headed to the Senate floor, and most likely will pass the Senate floor and go on to the Assembly. But hey, you never know. They actually might get voted down at the Senate floor, but most likely they will pass to the Assembly. So anyway, family, that's it. I didn't want to go too long today. Just give everyone an update on what's happening. We will actually be talking about birthright citizenship and reparations here with the Trump administration, and also kind of the attitude that's happening right now here in the United States with reparations. So anyway, be on the lookout for that. And before we go, I really appreciate everybody for coming in today. Shout out to Donnie. Salute to you, brother. Hope all is well with you. Fabados in the bill. I like that, Fabados. Brother Michael, the prospect of free money has created millions of new victims of slavery out of thin air. Okay, that's your opinion. Okay, audio is good. Audio is good. Good job, bro. Very interesting stuff. Thank you for joining. Appreciate you. All right, family, that is it. So once again, please like, share, and subscribe, and we will be talking to you later at another date. Let's see here. So currently with the American freemen, is there a lot of fake reparations going on, or is there actually movement to repair and compensate American freedmen in the United States of America? So everybody have a great one. Happy Decoration Day. Happy Memorial Day. And we'll see you when we see you. All right. We are out. Take care of yourself. And as always, peace and lineage-based reparations. Memorial Day, originally known as Decoration Day, is one of the federal holidays in the United States for honoring and mourning the U.S. military personnel who died while serving in the United States Armed Forces. It is observed on the last Monday of May. Memorial Day is also considered the unofficial beginning of summer in the United States. There have been many stories on the origin of Memorial Day. However, one of the oldest stories takes place in Charleston, South Carolina. On May 1st, 1865, in Charleston, South Carolina, the recently freed black population held a parade of 10,000 people to honor 257 deceased Union soldiers. The soldiers had been buried in a mass grave at the Washington Race Course, having died at the Confederate prison camp located there. After the city fell, the freed black population unearthed and properly buried the soldiers, placing flowers at their graves. The event was reported contemporaneously in the Charleston Daily Courier and the New York Tribune. Historian David Blight has called this commemoration the first Memorial Day. Decoration Day, later known as Memorial Day, would be officially established by General John Logan's 1868 proclamation for a national holiday. Please like, share, and subscribe.
The way it currently stands, forced labor, slavery takes precedence over rehabilitation and public safety.
Oh, by the way, while the Biden administration gives reparations to everyone but freed people, look at the billions he has run over to Ukraine.
We don't have black grocery stores because if you think about it now, just to get in that supply chain, it's almost unheard of.
They don't want the truth to get out. Okay? I don't want to know what my family did or what all these people did and all this stuff like that. Okay? You read that 500-page report.
There's this thing called white superiority and black inferiority. That mindset allows all of the behaviors that we've seen across generations, allows for the construction of these policies and practices and systems and structures that continue to oppress us. This is not a handout.
This is a debt that is owed.
You know, Allensworth was like the internet of his time in 1904, 1905.
The total black population in California is about 2.6 million, and then of that, the descendants compose about 2.2 million of that. So California, with a multi-billion-dollar surplus, can absolutely afford to satisfy the international terms for reparations, beginning with compensation.
Any financial obstacle that exists that impedes the success of increasing financial prosperity needs to be dealt with and eliminated.
No matter where we've been, no matter what part of this fight we've been in, we've been harmed, and we've had harm done to us specifically.
When I got to Los Angeles, this was some of the worst segregation I'd ever seen. And remember, I'm telling you, I'm from Mississippi.
Because as you can see, I'm giving you broken history right now, you know? But I had to give it to you guys today. I said, no, I got to show them this because it's so precious and nobody really knows about it.
Black people don't have that kind of luxury. Our historically black communities have been redistricted multiple times.
Now listen, if you can't handle the TR roof, don't tune in.